Okay,
Great.
let's call it to order.
Commissioner Castillo-White.
Here.
Chair Jansen.
Here.
Commissioner Stevens. Here. Commissioner Custer. Here. Commissioner Landry. Vice Chair Steffen.
Here.
Commissioner Hill.
Here.
Okay, with that, do we have everybody online that we're going to have? Okay, great. And for those who'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Swear tatty.
All right. For our online audience, do we have any public comment on non-agenda items? It's quiet out there. Paul?
Can you hear us, Paul?
Yes, I can. I don't have anything.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I'm gonna keep turning around to look at there, and he's right there, probably. All right, discussion. First thing on our agenda is the Indian John and Indian Mary Street name discussion. Nick or Erica, do you want to kick it off with anything? I'll kick it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll kick us off here, and I know Commissioner Stevens, he was in the park committee last year and kind of knows about this history, so if I misconstrue any information,
From the Parks meeting?
please feel free to correct me because I was not present. So the issue that you have before tonight, we have a little white paper. When the Parks Advisory Committee last year was going through the naming process for Sharon Nesbitt Heritage Park and the Chalk Trail, it was brought up to their attention that we have some street names here in Troutdale that are Indian John and Indian Mary. We actually have 4 street names with those names. And it was brought to their attention, you know, and they had a little small discussion, you know, are those names the most appropriate street names for Troutdale? And they had that discussion, and then it didn't come back to them for a couple of months. And staff, we came back, and we said, you had this discussion a couple of months ago when the decision was made about these street names. What would you like to do? And they had this conversation in January, at their first meeting in January, and they came to the conclusion that, you know, we're the Parks Committee, we shouldn't be involved in, you know, in naming streets. Why don't we take this issue to the Historic Landmarks Commission to, you know, to see what their thoughts are. So that brings us here tonight. You know, is that the most appropriate name for streets in Troutdale? We do have street naming code in our development code, and I kind of outlined what that is through our plating standards. So when a subdivision comes in, when a street is newly created here in Troutdale, it says that the street shall be given a historically significant street name whenever possible. So when that subdivision was platted with those street names, it was found at that time that those street names were historically significant. At that time, there is a process for, you know, there could be a process for changing a street name. It's pretty involved. We would need to go out and, you know, seek public engagement from, you know, the owners along those streets to, you know, gather their feedback. We haven't received any complaints as a city about those street names from any property owners along those streets or any community member in Troutdale at this time. So this issue is really kind of just brought up through the park naming and trail conversation. And it didn't arise from a property owner or a community member. So tonight, I think we wanted to kind of like review, like, who is Indian John or Old John? Was this person, do we have any more information, like what makes them significant? Are those street names appropriate? Or would this committee like to make a formal recommendation to our community advisory committee and have them kind of go through the process to rename those streets? That all made sense. In order. And Frank, feel free if I've like.
That was a great, thank you very much, Director. Yeah, that was pretty much a really condensed version of a lengthy discussion that, I don't know if we should call it an issue.
Right.
Because it was more of a question and a conversation.
Right.
And basically Parks was like, this is not our forum. So let's get the facts and research and then we'll see where we want to go from there. So.
Jim?
So I was in those meetings as well with the parks, and I remember it, just like you said, Erica, with the exception that I believe that group was suggesting that this historic group, with all its vast knowledge, be asked to find out what those names came from, which now we have done, and that then it be considered to go to the committee that's most appropriate. Parks didn't feel it was an appropriate committee. It wasn't in their purview. I don't think they were presuming or assuming that this committee's purview includes this, but the CAC may be a better option. Thank you.
Appreciate all of that. And I might add another angle to consider is to, as opposed to us presuming anybody in the city, presuming they know best or know better, and even beginning a process, I think we should involve like members of the Grand Ronde or some of the tribes, because they have been involved in naming processes in the region. They will assign someone to help participate in that, and we can find out from their perspective about how they feel about the name before we even start doing something, you know. How do they feel about it? How do they see it? And then either guide it or at least include them in the process.
I agree, but I think the process, that part of the process is down the road. I mean, the real question here is, do we even need to go down that road?
Well, it is. That's exactly right. That's why I think we should engage them right off the get-go.
But it's not a complaint. So do we really need to, can we decide as a group or the Citizens Advisory Committee decide whether or not it's even something that we need to worry about?
I don't think so, because I think that, I don't know, in my lifetime, Indians were super cool to me, right? And that was not a bad word. That was not a derogatory word. I don't know how they feel about it now. How do they feel about that term? And so I think that's where we need to start is, it's one of those things where it's, I think that there may be a perception by people or changing times, is that how do people feel about that? How do Native Americans feel about that? And I think that's where we should start. Instead of us.
Again, no one's telling us this is a problem. No one is saying we're offended by this, or maybe there are our friends are offended by it, or whatever it is. No one living on that street is saying this is offensive to us. There's no one saying we need to look into this.
Well,
and so I don't think that going to the tribes are right now, unless we decide, yes, this is something as a city we should be sensitive and feel that maybe we need to look at all the street names, and is there anything that's, derogatory or insensitive to anybody? It opens up a gigantic box, if that's what we're doing. I think if there was a complaint, then definitely we would be on it.
Okay, I did a lot of research. So, and then I even looked at Quora's with a native site that had not 59, I think it was 5.9 million hits. And natives talking amongst each other, and they talk about that. What if they find offensive or not. And the consensus was that they thought a lot of younger white people had more issue with it than they did themselves. And then I did get a few conversations from them. And the really interesting thing was, and this is what made it a lot of fun, there's those other 2 Indian Marys, right? And so there's one that has a 90-acre or 50-acre park named after her somewhere in southern Oregon. It's a different Indian Mary. And there's the other Indian Mary that she did something in the gorge. And then there's a street named after her, Indian Mary, and then there's also a park named after her. 2 separate Indian Marys, and they're both very interesting stories, and not our Indian.
Mary Tibbetts also.
Yeah, that's ours, right? Mary Tibbetts.
Well, there's more than one Mary Tibbetts with the last name Mary Tibbetts.
Got it, okay.
So it really convolutes everything.
Because they combine 2, and I go, okay, I read all the different separate stories, and then it looked like one got comboed with that one that they said the park was named after in the gorge somewhere, and then somebody else said it was also Mary Tibbetts. So, but the one thing that I did notice is that for recognition for the park's names, they were trying to give the honor and include their ancestry, which that they were native, that they were Indian. And so historically, it's like a part of it is a name like, the suggestion, maybe just call it Mary Tibbetts. It doesn't give historical significance to, it's like, hey, I'm thinking Indians are cool. I'm from, my high school was, when I went back to El Paso, was the Isleta Indians. We were that was the name of our school, and that was, we were Indians, and we all took that as a sense of pride. And then, but again, I wanted to see what other natives were saying. And one thing, let me see if I could find it.
But can I just
Sure.
say something?
Yeah,
I think that's great that you did that research.
Yeah.
I would want local elders in person giving us that advice, not Cora.
right. And, yeah, but I liked reading,
If they said that, said, no, we're good with it, awesome.
I
This
was
is like a
reading,
done
I was
deal.
reading tons of conversations between the different native tribes and themselves, and then looking at different data. And historically, they always used Indian when they were, even some of them describing their own tribe. The Tigua Native Indian, the Tigua Indians or whatever, so a lot of them like to use that word. But if anything, if we kind of come up with a conclusion, looking at things and saying why we're thinking what we're thinking, and then at the end, like Leanne said, then say, do you find this offensive? Or because I was finding out most of them, they had a different term for Native American and they were not applying it to themselves. So there's a whole bunch of different conversations going on about the preferences of whether it's Indigenous, First Nations, Native American. It's just very interesting. But one person, they like to call themselves the human beings, is what they call themselves. So they're all talking differently. But the museums and historically, they use the word Indian a lot. And so, I don't know. I'm thinking if we make a decision, and then we could just, if you want to include a couple, say we're honoring them. We haven't had a complaint. Where we want to just see to you as a tribe, do you find that offensive? But keep it super simple, because I know there's a lot of expense for changing names. I talked to my husband that also he says you have to change deeds to your home. That has to be done. So it's not just a simple change of a street. There's a whole bunch of components that are involved in that. And let's see. Go ahead and talk. I just didn't know if there was one other little point to pop out, but but like I said, I really enjoyed hearing what the natives, what they say historically with the word Indian, you know, what the different things that the Indian Mary were honored in, you know, in the state of
Yeah.
Oregon.
Yeah.
The three Indian Marys, and then, right. But it was fun learning about these women, and, yeah, so anyway, that's it for now.
If we can easily, simply, like you said, send a letter explaining the situation and getting their opinion without going to a lot of depth and involving the community and creating this big
Yeah.
deal, then that helps us know what direction to take, if we need to take a direction. And, you know, just like you said, the local tribe, Debbie would, and I'm sure they've had this question before, and I'm sure they have an opinion, so hearing their opinion would be nice to hear, but I really hate to go out and open this up, because I just feel it's gonna turn into a gigantic mess.
Yeah, I don't, well,
And a lot
it
of,
might not be necessary. I mean, if, instead of us people feeling like they're, and I think everybody's intentions are really good of trying to do the right thing that's respectful. We just first need to find out if it's a problem, how they feel about it. So that's the first step. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's worth asking the appropriate groups the question, because I mean, we don't want to make the mistake of superimposing, I mean, our own historical perspectives on something, and kind of assuming that it's a non-issue just because to date it's flown under the radar. Because I mean, I've seen that happen.
That goes both ways.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Both ways, so,
It
right.
absolutely does.
just
I mean,
goes-
so, but to what Leanne is saying, that is something that I think can be done discreetly. Because if there is anything resembling a wider public engagement, I mean, that's going to, I think, inevitably rile up the most extreme ideas in both communities. Because I saw that happen over and over and over and over again, particularly like in the 2000s it was in the Midwest, and there was that round of kerfuffle over school mascots. And it was I mean, the extreme elements of both camps that ended up getting into the shouting match. And that's something I think we can avoid if we're tactful about it. We definitely don't want to ignore it. I mean, no question about that. I mean, because doing that would eventually, one way or another, come back to bite us.
Yeah. Frank?
Yeah, I just had some thoughts on there's been no complaint process. As a guy that volunteers with parks, I've had to remove the N-word a number of times from graffiti, swastikas. I mean, it's all over the city, more often than you know. That being said, systemically, I mean, a lot of the stuff you're dealing with is a systemic issue. So the term itself, like you said, it's not as much us as how does the tribe, how do they feel about it? So the fact that we haven't had a complaint, I think we can realistically be ahead of the game. I don't have complaints when I'm dealing with the graffiti, but it still isn't right.
Right.
Just because we don't have a complaint doesn't make it appropriate.
Right.
So I think as a city, I think it's our responsibility to look at it from that perspective. And I really love your idea about really talking to the locals. I mean, we just did the Pledge of Allegiance, but when have we ever done a land acknowledgement? So, yeah, these are things systemically, yeah, the power structure in play is the one that gets to dictate the terms. So the words that we see on our places are dictated by the people in power.
I was reading that Native American term was mostly used by the feds. So that's what I was also reading when I was reading this. So see, some of the terms that we think could possibly be more appropriate are not appropriate
Right.
to the tribe because they have what they feel, their
Yes.
what they feel.
Well, and that's changed over the generations
It is,
too.
and that's why they said that they think the younger kids have more issues with it than they do as tribes themselves. I mean, I read a lot, so that I'm summarizing, but just want to read this one, because this sums up all the, like I did hours of looking at this stuff, because it was just fun. But this one gal wrote, she's a native, "This is a tricky question. I need to assure the reader, and I only speak for myself, not for native people, not for my tribe, not my clan. I don't even try to speak for my children, especially on the issue. I deeply respect each person's right to claim the name by which they call themselves. No one native makes that determination for anyone, but for herself or himself. I would be